What is up, everyone? Welcome into the Theta Vault. My name is Dave, and today I'm going to go over my plays from last week, my thoughts going into those plays, and my thoughts moving forward into next week and beyond. The first thing I'm going to do is look at my spreadsheet. So let's go take a look now at my profit from last week and how I broke it down. $542 came from stocks, $58.29 came from credit spreads, $12.80 came from other options, and then I had a few fees. My total profit from last week was about $7,600 more or less. I think I might be missing a few fees somewhere because my spreadsheet says I should have 181,205.27, but my actual account balance was 181,188.81. Try saying that 10 times fast. Don't know how that worked out, but that's what it was. So I think I'm missing a few fees somewhere in Robinhood. I think my numbers are all good, so I'm gonna have to double check some of the fees that I might be missing. Let's talk about how I broke that down last week. So I had two stocks that I bought. I bought Micron and Lululemon before they reported earnings. Now Micron, I kind of regret not holding through earnings. As everyone knows, Micron jumped 14-15% this week. It had a huge earnings. They reported profitability for the first quarter in a while, and they also increased their guidance for the next few quarters. So everyone was excited about that. The reason I didn't hold is because the tech sector in general has just been going crazy recently. Everyone's saying we're in an AI bubble, we're in a tech bubble. I don't know if we're in a tech bubble, AI bubble to say, but Micron isn't really a big player right now, so I wasn't all that convinced. I was convinced they were going to increase before earnings. I know there was a huge bullish sentiment, and there still is. So if you are interested in buying Micron, now I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Nothing that I'm doing here is financial advice. But if you do like the tech sector and you like semiconductor stocks, you like the new and up and comers in the industry, I do think Micron could be a good hold for the future, but I would give it a few days to cool off. Anyway, I did buy 2,400 shares of those at $93.96. I sold them for a measly $72.90 profit, but I did make some extra income off of some credit spreads, or excuse me, some covered calls that I sold against Micron that I'll talk about here in a second. I also bought Lululemon before they reported earnings, of course. Now they did drop after earnings, and I was actually going into the week, I was a little bit bullish, but I changed my sentiment. I became very bearish on Lululemon and the whole retail sector in general. And that was for a multitude of reasons that I can talk about in another video. But I did sell those before earnings, luckily, and I made quite a bit more. I made $461.95 for a total of $542.15 on all my stocks last week. Now, like I said, there was covered calls that I sold and some call credit spreads that I sold. So those covered calls were on Micron. I sold these because the implied volatility on Micron stocks was just massive, and everyone usually says like sell high, buy low, and that's the same with implied volatility. So when implied volatility is high, I like to sell calls or puts against my stocks. So I did that with Micron. I made $1,280 on that, and that's really the whole reason that I closed out that position, was because I made that money on my covered calls. So I did make that, which is fine, and then I took everything. And I was so bearish on Lululemon for many reasons, mainly because the retail sector is not doing good right now for many reasons that I can talk about in another video. But those call credit spreads did pull through. They were very, I mean, Lulu finished, I think that finished like down 10 or 11% today. So these worked out great. I made $5,800. What can I say? Now let's talk about how I found it. Now this is a mess, right? I made this weeks ago. I've been adding to it slowly, and actually next week, this is my final version of my call credit spread worksheet. This is just how I find the call credit spreads that I want to enter. And so for last week, this was kind of my preliminary checkup, and I put in all these numbers, and eventually it gives me this Dave score is what I call it. It tells me how good I think it is personally. This isn't like a crazy algorithm that I found online. This is my algorithm that I made up for myself. So when I see a Dave score of like 101 or 103, I immediately am like, okay, this is probably going to work out. And it did. I mean, really all of these worked out. As you can see, I got max win on everything except for FedEx and GIS, which I was never going to enter GIS anyway. when I ran these numbers, it was 56 Dave score, and it did win, but it only won by a little bit. I mean, GIS finished just above 69, not enough to actually lose 15 cents of premium, but I wouldn't have made the full 15 cents. I wouldn't have made the full 15%. I forgot exactly what it finished at. And then FedEx, everyone knows FedEx had a huge week. They're cutting so many costs for next quarter and beyond that it really made investors excited. That was kind of out of nowhere because it only had an implied movement of 6%, and I think it went up like 11 or 12 or even more than that. So FedEx would have been a loss, but lucky for me, I was not in FedEx. I did Lulu. So I actually did my midweek checkup here. These numbers are from my midweek check. And then when I did this, I actually saw that PDD was the best choice. And I would have entered PDD and it would have worked out. But I forgot that they reported before market open and not after. So I missed out on that play. So I settled for Lulu instead. And I liked it. It worked out and everything was fine. And then I did my last checkup right before earnings on Thursday. That's how it was sitting. Lulu was actually dropped on my overall Dave score, but that was beside the point. I was already in the play. So that's how it ended up. The 565.70 spread was what I went with based off the delta and the premium that I collected. So I thought it was pretty safe, and it was pretty safe. So going ahead into next week, now there's not a lot of earnings next week. I like to play earnings stocks mostly because there's more volatility. If I'm selling options, the implied volatility is higher. If I'm selling call credit spreads, the implied volatility is higher, so I can go out further and have less risk. But next week's earnings aren't anything to get excited about. I mean, we have, and I can actually show you the full list that I have here that I pulled off of Wall Street Bets, but we have McCormick, we have GameStop, we have Cintas, Jefferies, Walgreens, Oxford. I mean, these aren't big names, folks. We got GameStop, which is kind of a big name for some people if you're into that community, but I mean, it's on my list because the implied volatility is so high, but really none of these stocks are getting me too excited except maybe Carnival Cruise Line could see some bearish movement after earnings. But if you look at the chart for Carnival Cruise Line, and I wasn't actually prepared to do this, but I did consider this one. It is one more earnings stock that I was excited about. It's kind of on an uptrend, and as you can see on the uptrend here, it's kind of at the top of this uptrend in the last 3 months or so, or 2 months since February 21st. So I do think that it could fall back down to the other, to like down here to the bottom of the trend line, but it could also go up to the top back to where it was at this trend line here. And I don't think I can draw lines on Robinhood right now. I do have the Thinkorswim platform too, but yeah. So it's nothing for me to get excited about. So what I'm gonna plan on doing instead is I'm going to plan on buying and holding some of these stocks for 2 or 3 weeks. These are all stocks that report earnings in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I expect that some of these will see some bullish movement in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I have kind of decided against CarMax because the auto industry in general, I feel like is going to see a decline coming up. I mean, car prices are falling, but that's not necessarily a good thing for the auto industry. So I expect that CarMax, it's going to be 50-50, and I'm not looking to purchase something that I'm not actually invested in myself. So I don't think CarMax is going to work out, but the rest of these have potential, with the exception of maybe Tesla. Again, auto industry, a lot of bad news recently. Elon Musk's kind of going crazy. So Tesla's another one that I'm not really looking forward to. But the rest of these are pretty reliable stocks that I feel like could see some growth in the next few weeks. As far as my updated sheet here, all of these numbers now are coming directly from the Thinkorswim RTD. So every day I'll get updates on these prices. The Dave score will change every day. If I see the Dave score change on any of these, or I put any other stocks in here, I could potentially enter a call credit spread next week. But that means I'd have to get out of my stocks that I'm planning on purchasing. Oh no, I've done something. There it is. And again, you know, any of these stocks that I buy, I could decide to sell call credit, or covered calls against, but none of these calls have very high implied volatility at the moment. These are all pretty reliable stocks. Like, I mean, Conagra is like 18% implied volatility. BlackRock's like 25%. With the exception of Tesla, I'm not ever going to get into Tesla. So, you know, I think my plan going forward is going to be buy and hold some of these stocks, looking for, maybe 5% growth in the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's the target anyway. I may or may not get there. And as they approach earnings, I'll probably let them go. We'll reevaluate all these positions later on and throughout the week and pretty much every day. So that's how I'm looking into the future. That's how I got to where I am. That's what I'm looking at for pretty much everything here. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe if you have questions or ideas. And now in the future, I will be going over more than just my portfolio. I'll go over earnings, news, press releases, anything related to stocks. I may even upload some tutorials on credit spreads, options, things like that. So if you're interested in those kind of things, make sure you stick around, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys around. Good luck in the markets and have a great weekend.